All right. So, like I said, good morning. Today we'll look at forms a little bit, and I'm going to assume that not everyone has a lot of experience with forms, so we're going to start out at the beginning, and then we'll add some more advanced features a little bit later on so that everybody can use them. Forms is a great tool. You can use it with your school website. You could also use it with your Google Classroom. It's a great way to get information back from students uh, and what. All right, so let's just get started. I'm going to go ahead and open up a fresh window. I need to sign into my Google account, which I've already done. If you haven't, you'll see a blue sign in button. You click sign in with your school's account, and then you'll be at the same place I am. What I like to do to start out is, and also another tip I usually use is I usually like to use the Chrome browser. Google is a Chrome product, Forms is a Google product, so they usually work out best. So I'm going to hit these dots, the tools, the chiclets, whatever you want to call them. I'm going to go to Drive, and I like to start out by telling Google where I want to put my form. So there's a couple of different ways you can start forms. You might see a tool in there, but I like to go to where I want the form to be first. So I go into my Drive. I'm going to put our form in my classroom sample resources folder. So I'm just going to double click that. And then I like to go over to the New button. And I don't see forms, but it's here under More. And I click on Forms, and you don't have a lot of choices here anyway, so I'm just going to click a blank form. I think that's the easiest way to start. All right, and you might notice now I'm in a form and ready to get started. The first thing I like to do is name my form. I can either name it up in the top left or right here. I'm just going to call this Demo 4-9 so that I know it's from today. And then form description, if I want to, I can give the students any information that I like. Yes, sorry, I was talking too quickly, so no problem. We can definitely do that. And if you've missed anything, feel free to ask, and we can always recap. Really, I've gone into Drive so far, and I decided where I wanted my form to live, and that's mostly for my reference so that I can find it later. I clicked on New. I went to More, and then I went to Google Forms, and that launched up Forms. And if you're already familiar with it, there's a couple other ways you can launch too. That's just what I like to do so that I know where the form is located. If I want to give any description, I can. A lot of times students kind of get nervous that it's a quiz or whatever. I'll say, this is a quiz, unless it is. And please do your best. Something like that. And you might notice I've named it here. Okay, I'll fix it. So the name, if I just click up at the top, you can see name kind of matches the document wherever I like. After that, they do have some limited themes. You might notice that across the top. So if I click on the palette here, it'll show me what kind of themes I might have. Color or this image, you could always change it at any time. So if you decide, hey, I don't like this at this time, I can always change it. So maybe I'll just go with these bubbles this time. If I hit insert, so I've just kind of found a theme that is sort of pleasing to me. Doesn't really do a lot to my form. You don't have a lot of choices. I mean, and you can, once I've chosen this purplish picture, it's kind of giving me color palette to work with. And like I said, anytime you can always change that. If I scroll down, I don't have too many other choices. Font style, I mean, if I want to do something like that, I usually just leave it as is. Okay, so I've set up the theme so far, and now it really has a starter question for me. So, so I can really go ahead and put my first question here. Some people like to number them. You can put number 1 if you like. I usually don't, because there's a choice later. You can mix up the questions. You can let it choose random order, but certainly nothing wrong with putting numbers there if you like. So let's just look at a couple of different types of questions that we can ask. And when we will start this one with maybe a history kind of themed unit. So maybe I'll start out and we'll ask a fairly easy one. How many states USA? And you might notice over here on the right, asks me what kind of question I'd like this to be. So I could leave it a short answer. They could type in a number. But on this one, I think I'm going to start out with a multiple choice. And then it automatically populates here. It asks me what option 1 is, and I can put in some options. So I'll try 13. I can either hit enter, or I could just click on the next line, whichever you prefer. Maybe we'll put in 50, and we'll hit enter again. We'll put another choice. Maybe I'll put 75. And you can really put as many choices as you like. I'll even put 100 here. And I'll even do this add other. So at this point, the students kind of can choose any of these. They can even choose other and fill their answer in. But that's probably too many choices for them. I don't really need that many. You might have noticed these X's show up here on the right. So if there's any choices I want to remove, I can just hit on that X. So that removes that choice, and I don't need them to fill in their own answer. So I'm going to certainly remove that choice as well. I think 3 for this question is good enough. You might also notice down here at the bottom, these tools here, I can make this a required question. If I throw that switch, they cannot submit their form when they're done unless they have at least put down an answer for each question. So I usually do that. That kind of prevents them from skipping questions on you. And then you might say, okay, that's nice. That's one question. But how do I make more questions? And one way you could do it is you could use this copy key. This will duplicate this question and my answers. So if I was going to ask a question, maybe something like, how many stripes are there on the flag? I already have my answer. So duplicate might be a good choice for that. So I'm just going to duplicate, and I'll say like, how many stripes the U.S. flag. So it kind of saved me the trouble of retyping some of those answers and such. And I can make that a multiple choice question as well. But most of the time, you probably want to ask a different question. So I'm going to go ahead and use these tools that are over here on the right. This plus will go ahead and add another question, and it's going to put a question after whatever I have selected. So you might notice here this blue bar along the left. I have this question selected. So whenever I use any of these actions, any of these tools, it's going to put the next thing underneath. If I was on this question, I can just click on it. Now I'm on this question. See how this is highlighted in blue? If I use this plus, it's going to put whatever these things are underneath next for me. I'll put it after this question. So I'll select here. I'll hit this plus. And we'll go ahead and ask another type of question. Maybe we will ask, let's ask a true or false. We'll ask a true false type question. So we'll say there are 50 stars on the flag, US flag. All right, and I could certainly use multiple choice again. I can make option 1 true and option 2 false. That's one way to go about it. But let's just use a different type of question. So if I click this drop down, you'll see a couple of other choices. And I want this to be a drop down type question. And in the drop down question, it's asked me what my choices are. I'll say this one's true, this one's false. And it actually filled it in. It was smart enough to know that's probably what I was going to pick. So now we have that question. And let's try, and again, I might have forgotten to throw this required switch, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm actually going to click and make sure it's on this one. It is, because I had copied that question. So let's go with another, maybe we'll ask another type of question. Again, I have this one selected, this bottom one. So if I hit this plus for new question, it automatically goes after that. And maybe we'll ask which ocean closest to Long Island. And maybe I'll actually ask them to do a fill-in. So here's a short answer type. And I just, so they can type anything they want in here. In fact, actually, to register for this class, you guys used a Google form, and you had filled in your email address. And you filled in, your district. So you could type anything that you like. And I'll make this a required question as well. And maybe at this point too, we'll use one of these other tools, and then we'll look and see how we can actually turn this into a quiz and check student answers. Something else I like to do though is I like to use this text tool. This text tool kind of gives me the ability to kind of label sections. So you notice at first we have a couple of multiple choice questions. Now we have a true false with a drop down. Now we have a short answer. It's probably a good idea to let the students know what kind of questions are coming. So I'm going to use this text tool. And I'm just going to say, choose the correct answer. Next two. Right, and you might say, well, that's nice, but it's not in the right place. I really need that to be above here. Well, I can, if you might notice, whenever I mouse around, if I mouse over certain parts, like the top of these questions, I get that four-headed arrow. I could actually click, hold, and drag these questions into different order. So I want this to be up at the top. The top one usually gives me a little trouble, so I'll just do the best I can. I'm going to click on this. I got the four-headed arrow. I'm going to move it up. I don't want it to be on top of this question. I don't want it to be on top of this. I want it to kind of be on top of the first question. And I always have a little trouble. I don't know if everyone else does as well, but I can never get it up on top of that top question. So I kind of cheat a little bit. I just put it under my top question, and then I can move the top question underneath this one. And I'm not sure why that is, but I always have that problem. And I'll just try that one more time. So if I just grab this, so now they have the instructions for these next two. They know it's going to be multiple choice, and they're all set. And if I don't want to drag and drop, I could just make sure my things are going in the right place. I can click on this question. So now I know I'm on this question. When I hit the text tool here, it's going to go into the right place. I don't have to worry about dragging and dropping. I can say I'm going to choose false. I can give additional information if I like. And, maybe we'll do it one more time. I'll click on this and I'll do this text tool one more time and I'll say fill in. And so we have a couple of different types of questions. We could also do things like add pictures and add videos, and maybe we'll look at that in a couple of minutes, but I think this kind of helps get you started so you have a good idea how the question system works and how to get questions in. But you might wonder, how can you check answers, or maybe have Google automatically check these answers for me so I don't have to grade all of these. And some of you will have to kind of look over like the short answer or paragraph type questions. You might have noticed that in the question type, and we'll look at those again in a couple minutes. But let's go back and see how to actually put in correct answers and all. Just if we scroll back all the way up to the top of the form, you might notice this eyeball. That'll show me a preview of the form of what it's going to look like to the students. And we'll take a second, we'll click on that. So this is what the form is going to look like to them and how they'd be able to fill it out. You might notice these, I can choose one of the answers. I can choose one of the answers here. I can use the drop down, and I can choose either the true or false choice for these, and then I'd have to type something. You might also notice these asterisks. Those asterisks show up because I made them required questions. So if you even just preview, you can kind of make sure I've thrown the switch for required question because the asterisk is next to all of these. And when they've finished all of their answers, they can go ahead and hit the submit button. I'm not going to do that right now. And also a question I get sometimes is, can students maybe start this quiz or start filling this out and then come back to it later? And they can if they just leave their browser open. But if they actually close out of it and want to come back later, it's going to give me a little warning that everything I put in is going to be lost. And right now we were just kind of practicing, so I'm just going to leave. I don't care. But they would rather not do that. They'd have to start over. All right, but we were talking about how can we choose the correct answers to these. So we looked at the eyeball, which kind of gave us a preview, but this gear, the settings, is something we'll talk about next. So in these settings, depending on where I'm going to put this form and how you're going to use it, you might want to set a couple of these general settings. If I'm putting it on my website, if I have a class web page, maybe I'm at a school where the students don't have Google accounts or other accounts, I may not want to turn on this collect email addresses. That'll kind of force people to sign in with a Google account if I do that. You might notice by default, I'm using my BOCES account, and it says here, restrict users to the ES BOCES and its trusted organizations. Well, if I don't have those, if I'm giving this out to parents, there's a good chance they don't have that. So I want to make sure I turn that off. If you're putting this in your Google Classroom and you're using Google Classroom, well, then all the students have to have Google accounts to get in your classroom in the first place. So you could certainly leave these on. So depending on how you're using the form, you might want to choose those. Over here, the presentation tab, we'll just talk about this because we're here. This is where I was talking before. You could shuffle question order. You can get things to show up in random order. And you can also give them a little message for when they've completed it. By default, it's going to say your response has been recorded. But you can send them a message, thanks for turning it in. We'll get back to you, soon, or whatever you might want to say. The most important one, I think, though, you want to do is this quizzes tab. So in order for this to be able to be scored, you want to be on this quizzes tab and throw this switch that says make it a quiz. And then you have a couple choices once you do that. I usually just let them see their grade right after they turn it in because I think it makes them feel better. They can see what kind of questions they were correct or incorrect, like I said, right off the bat. Something just to be a little leery of if you are giving a score, if it is a quiz and they had any kind of essay question, or they might have had some short answers that they might not have typed in exactly as you did, it'll score those incorrect. And sometimes they get a little upset that, hey, why did I only get a 50 or something? Because, it's because half the questions might not be scored. So if you're concerned about that, you might want to leave it as later, so that you can review it, actually give them the actual score and turn it in. Or maybe just give them a little warning beforehand, it's going to score the questions it can, but it's not your final score until I grade the essay, or, let them know. And I usually just leave these bottom ones on also. So, but I have thrown this switch to make it a quiz. I hit save. And now I'm back over here at our form. And you might notice when I click on a question now, because I can always click on a question to change it. Now I have a new button over here that says answer key and points. That wasn't there until I went up and hit the gear and turned it into a quiz. So I'm on this question, so I'll hit the answer key button. I can tell it how many points each question is so that you can score more. Some points can weigh more than others. If I make each one 1 point, that's fine. They all be scored equally. I make them 5 points. Google, when it scores them for you, is just however many points you have available, it's going to give them a score. If I only had 3 questions, they were 5 points each, it's going to tell me whatever my score is out of 15. So you might want to consider that when you're making up your quiz if you're going to score it with points. So I put in points. How many states are there? I can choose the correct answer. And I can say done. And you can see at a glance the correct answer. The students will not see that check mark when they do the quiz. We'll try that out in the preview mode in a few seconds. How many stripes? So I can do the same thing. I have to click on the question. I get the answer key. I can tell it how many points. I'm just going to make this one 5 points also. Stripes, so I'll click 13 for that. And you might have noticed this other button that showed up after I'm picking an answer. It says add answer feedback. I'm going to click on that this time. So if I want to, I can give them feedback on the incorrect answers. I can't give them feedback for each individual incorrect answer, but I could say, please review. And I can actually give them a link to a website, a document, or I could give them a video to maybe look at. I can also give feedback for correct answers. You might notice that over here. So if I want to give feedback for this one, I could say good work or something. Or whatever feedback you like. And feedback is optional. If I save it, then that question will have feedback. All right, and you can see at a glance what the feedback is. And you can always change it or get rid of it. Trash can will get rid of. A pencil will let you edit, and you can go ahead and change your feedback. And again, optional, you don't have to give feedback on questions. So we'll just do 1 or 2 more here. Here's my 50 stars. So I'll hit answer key. I'll choose the correct answer. I'll give it points. Done. I think I have 1 more. So this one, I want to talk about the answer for this one. So I click on here. I'll do answer key like we have been doing. I'll make it 5 points also. So it's asking me what's the correct answer. However I type this is how they have to type it. So if I type Atlantic Ocean, they have to type Atlantic Ocean exactly like I did to get that answer correct, for Google to score correct. You can always manually go back in and fix it if you notice it's a spelling error. But if they were to type Atlantic by itself at this point, or type Atlantic Ocean in lowercase letters, Google would still score it as incorrect. So just be careful with that if you are scoring these. But it also gives me other alternatives. I mean, I can type just Atlantic. Now, if they just typed Atlantic by itself, that'll get scored correct. So, I mean, I could try and anticipate all the things they might put in. You know, so if they type any of these exactly as I did, it will be scored correct for them. So you can try that. And like I said, though, all the time, whenever they're fill-ins or paragraph type questions, then you should you should be all set with that. I'll say done for this one. And this is sort of a basic quiz. So that, I think that really helps you get started on how to use a quiz. But let's add a couple of more advanced features, and then maybe we'll start taking some questions after that. And there's one or two other little details I just want to tidy up, before we get into questions. So I kind of glossed over a couple of other things. This button, that's import questions. Import questions comes from other quizzes I might have made. So if I had any quizzes already made, I can import questions from them. Pictures are nice to add, so maybe I will add a picture. You can add an image in a few different places. If I'm using this toolbar right here, this image will go in the middle of the document. So again, like before, wherever I'm on, whatever I've selected, so if I select this text, and now I'm using my toolbar over here, if I pick Add Image, it's going to put the image in between these two right after this. So maybe I want to have a picture of the United States here. So I could certainly hit Image, and I could go to my Google Drive and find one. I could upload one from my computer. I could link to one that's on someone else's webpage. I usually use the upload from my computer, where I like to keep all my materials in Google Drive. So I usually like to do that. But if you don't have one handy, you could even use image search. So I'm not gonna put my picture there though. There's a couple of other places where you might have noticed I had the picture icon. If I click on this question itself, you might notice next to each one of these answers, there's a picture icon. So if this question wasn't how many states there were, if this question was maybe, which state is New York, I could actually use this picture icon and put a picture of New York here. I could put a picture of, Texas here, and maybe a picture of another state down here, and have them choose the correct image. So depending on where the picture icon is, you can use images in your forms. And then the last place I see form pictures too is, you might have noticed it up here next to the question. So if I want the picture to go with this question only, maybe I can put it here, and it's going to put the picture in between my question and the answers. Maybe I'll just choose that one, and we'll put a picture in so everyone can see how picture works. So I'm going to go ahead and click on picture. I'm going to grab one from my Google Drive. And I usually have some good pictures in my classroom samples. And here's an outline map of the US. That seems pretty good. So I've clicked on it. I'll hit insert. And you might notice now the picture has gone in between the question, and if I scroll down, the answers. So depending on where you want the picture, either put it in with the toolbar, that'll kind of put it in between questions. So maybe the map goes with the next couple of questions. I could certainly have done that. I could have said, use the map below to answer the next two questions, and that would have worked. You might have noticed when I put my picture in too, I ended up getting these 3 vertical dots. So I might have a couple of options with my picture. So I'm going to click on my picture options. It lets me align it, change it, or remove it and add a caption. So those are the options I have after I put a picture in. You also might have noticed this video tool. So I can add a video. Whenever you're doing video with forms, it wants the video to be on YouTube. So I could have, instead of putting a map here or put a video here, I could have said, hey, watch this video, then answer the next questions. As long as the video is on YouTube, they can do that. To kind of get around that, if you do have a video in your Google Drive, or you have a video somewhere else that you want them to watch, I might put it in my classroom and say, hey, watch this video, and then do the quiz so that they kind of watch the video separately. And I would do the same thing if I was putting this on my website. Here's the video that I want you to watch it, then try the quiz. Let's just talk briefly about the other types of questions, and then I'll show you one more, 2 things, and then we certainly can answer some questions. So if I kind of click the plus here, I forgot where I was. So Here's where this new question showed up. So I'm just gonna hit the drop down and we'll talk about these. A short answer we saw, paragraph, they can kind of write a short essay. Maybe you have an essay type question, write a few sentences, write, exactly as it says there, paragraph. Multiple choice we looked at. What checkboxes is a lot like multiple choice, except for they can choose more than one answer. So maybe my question would be, what colors are on the American flag? And I could have 5 colors listed. They have to check off all the ones that are correct. Multiple choice lets them only choose one answer. Checkbox lets them choose multiple answers. Drop down, we saw that with the true false. File upload we can talk about, but they can actually upload a video or image to you. If you do turn on file upload, Google makes them sign in with a Google account. So if you're putting it on your web page, file upload, you just have to be aware that they have to do that. Linear scale, I almost never use because it's kind of like rate this on a scale of 1 to 5, but maybe you might need that. Multiple choice grid and checkbox grid are similar. I usually use that for doing like maybe matching type questions or some other question type like, is this a fruit or vegetable? You could have, a whole bunch of food products listed on one side and choose like fruit or vegetable. We can see multiple choice grid. It's a good way to do sort of an alternative to matching. And date and time, those are just date and time type answers. I don't usually use those either. So anyway, once you have all of your quiz set up, I like to go back up to the top, and you might wonder, how do I get this into my classroom? How do I get this onto my web page? And that's
Hey, Bill, can I add something?
Yeah,
before you go on? Go ahead. I was just thinking of something that I know has come up quite a bit for my secondary teachers. If you are using a Google form and you're looking to send it to multiple classes, so like if you teach, 4 or 5 different periods in a day, that drop down choice for a question, you might want to put in like period 1, period 2, period 4, whatever you teach, so that when you get the end results, you can sort your classes and not all your students' data gets jumbled within the same Google form. Okay.
Oh, yes, excellent. Yes. So a couple of different ways you can put your form in your classroom. I mean, if you're using Google Sites, you can certainly put it in by using the Google Drive option. You can also put it in to your Google Classroom by, again, using that add button when you add things to assignments and put your form in. You could also use this send button. And in send, I know in the district I usually work in, email is turned off for students. So I always grab this link. I can copy my link and I can get this onto my web page, put this in my Google Classroom, or get this link out, and then students have the ability to fill in my form. I'm going to go ahead and close out of this send form, and that was just from hitting this send button. But let's take a quick look and let's actually fill in some data, because you might have noticed this responses. Right now, I don't have any responses. I haven't sent my form out. We just made it, but I could. I can also make responses and kind of see what they look like if I use this eyeball, use the preview. Let's see what this looks like. And we'll just kind of take the quiz really quickly. How many states will answer? Oh, this is a question that I left in there accidentally when I was demonstrating the questions. So I can always delete that. How many stripes? True or false? And actually, if I didn't answer that, let's just say what happens to them. If they try to hit the submit button, it doesn't let them because I'm missing a question. It kind of highlights it. So let's put that in. We'll hit submit. And this is what it would look like for them. They can view their score right away. And they can see at a glance what they had gotten correct. If they chose the incorrect answer, it'll show them the correct answer because those are the settings I left in my settings. Here's the feedback that we had turned on for this question. Here's all the answers, and it tells me what my score was. Since I had 5 points each question, I got 20. Had I gotten one correct, this would have been 15 out of 20. So it does that for them. This opened an extra tab. I'm going to close it for a second. This also opened an extra tab. I'll close that. But you might notice here now I have responses because I've submitted a form. So one way you can look at the results is hitting on this responses button. And after we have more, it'll kind of show me, because this is the summary of how people answered each of my questions. So if I notice that one question, continuously people are getting incorrect or choosing one answer over another, maybe that's something where I can provide some additional material and say, hey, maybe we need to review this particular topic a little bit better. Maybe I can provide some other resources for the students to understand that concept better. So this is kind of at a glance. That's what summary is doing for me. A question will show me question by question how everyone answered. Again, with only one, it's hard to see. And if you want to see how individual people answered your questions, hit individual. And then I could see how each person answered. If there were more people, I could scroll through one at a time. But you might be thinking, hey, if I have, put this on my class website, I teach secondary, I have period 1, period 2, and such. You could certainly look at things a little differently. If I was putting it on my website, a couple of questions I might want to have on my form, if they don't sign in automatically, is I might need their name. So I might need to fill in a name, and I might need to fill in what class they're in. And we'll look at that too in a couple minutes, or I'll show you a demo form that has a little extra things on it. But either way, what I like to do when I start getting a lot of data in from my spreadsheet is I like to use this button on the responses. This creates a spreadsheet of my of all the responses from the students. So I'll click on that. I can create a new spreadsheet, and the create button's in the top right corner. So I'll do that. And here it goes ahead and creates a spreadsheet, the time that I answered, the score the person got, and then their answers to each question. And if I had something in here, like what period it is, I could actually use my spreadsheet and sort all the students by like period 1 or period 2. And I can kind of see, what students are kind of grouped together. Or maybe you shared this form with some of your other colleagues, and maybe your elementary, you could put, what class am I, or what's your teacher's name. And anytime I do anything like that, where I'm going to plan on doing sorting, I always like when I go back to my form to make that, if it's going to be a sorting type thing, I like to put in the question and give them the choices, either make it multiple choice or make it a drop down. That way, that all the responses are going to be say, I don't need anyone to write in, what class are you, and have someone put a 7, somebody write out the SEVEN, someone else write period 7. It'll just be all over the place if you don't make it a drop down. But I do think that's pretty much the basics of form. If you want to see, I made a kind of a more complete one. I'm just going to switch over to this finished one, which has some extra things in it. So in case you were wondering what the checkboxes look like, choose the colors in the flag. They can turn on as many as they like. This is kind of a matching type game. Match each state with its capital. So this is what I meant by this is that matrix, what a matrix type question can look like. Or if you want to choose, and maybe I'll just turn on the view really quick. So here's the preview, so you see what it looks like for them. Right, so and this is what it also looks like if I was putting it on my website. I'd ask them to enter their name, and if I want to separate it even more, I could say, what's your first name? What's your second name? So that you have extra columns. I like to do the drop down because now there's no question as to which class they're in. Right? Everything is going to sort out nicely for me. And then, like I was saying down below, here's where they can choose more than one answer. And here they can kind of match up what's the capital of these places. Or if you use these, then they can choose more than one. Like this was Southern and not, but this one is here and here. So depending on if you want them to choose more answers or fewer answers, you're all set. So there's a little demo of what all the questions can look like. And really, I think that's more than really just the basics. That's almost everything that forms can do. Sometimes I get questions like, can you put in math equations? It doesn't do subscript. It doesn't do subscripts. It doesn't do superscripts. The only way I can get around that is if I use those picture tools. If I have a picture of, like x squared, I have to put it in as a picture. It doesn't do exponents, and it doesn't do like chemistry equations with those subscripts. But you can get around it with pictures if you need to. I know I think I've been talking a lot. I think we covered a lot, but also, and I think Carrie's been answering some of the questions in the chat room, but if there's anything we didn't get to in the chat, or if anyone wants to,
So Bill, here, why don't I bring up a couple of things that I was a little unsure as to how to answer. So Dawn had asked about something that will allow us to read questions to students, like special ed students that might need a little assistance. I'm not sure if there is an add-on. It depends on the district that you're from. Like I know we have a lot of Sachem represented here, and add-ons are not allowed in our district as far as adding them. CAPTI is one platform that we had learned about. I think it's paid, so it depends on whether your district pays for it or not, but that actually will allow I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but CAPTI allows students to be able to kind of capture whatever text is on the screen and read it to them.
Yes, yes, you're talking about the Captive Voice?
Yes, yes, exactly.
Yes, yes, that was something it's like an add-on which I think is in my browser. Maybe my screen's just not big enough to to see it, but I can certainly add that on as a screen reader. And like Carrie was saying, I'm not 100% sure it's free because we went to a training on it, and I think they gave us premium accounts.
Mm, yeah, I think it is a paid thing. I thought I had heard that Sachem does have CAPTI, but that's something the special ed department could probably clarify for you.
Yes, but there's definitely
Um,
other screen readers too you could use, even if that one's not free. If I just go, I'm just open a new tab over here, and however you want to get to web store, I could type web store. I know I have a shortcut to it somewhere. If I do this, I know I see it. So here's my shortcut to web store. And as long as they're using Chrome, you can search in here for like extensions and screen reader maybe. A lot of times the operating system might even have it built in, so it'll read for you. So sometimes that happens. I mean, I don't know most of these. I know that like the one Carrie was just talking about was the CAPTI Voice, which I'm pretty sure I
I'm
have
just not
before.
sure if students will be able to add this if the district has extensions turned off. I think that was more the concern.
Right. That is true. So I'm not sure. Maybe check with your special ed department to make sure that you can turn them on. I mean, if the students are using their own devices at home, there's a good chance they can just add whatever extension that they'd like, um, and and be able to read it. But like I said, a lot of times too, a lot of the operating systems have like accessibility options, and it will actually be able to read just through the through the operating system.
All right. Another question. Hold on, I gotta go back into time here. Jamie had asked, creating a form. Oh, so she's talking about like math. If she wants the students to like draw up a math response, she was asking if there was like a draw tool built into Google Forms. I do not believe that there is. I know like drawings is a whole other app within Google. It's one of the Google apps that kids could do a drawing, and then I would believe that they would be able to then upload a drawing into the Google form, right? So Bill, I'm not sure if
Yeah.
you went over the upload option in a Google form, but you can make it like a question instead of it being, multiple choice. It would be upload your document here, and they would be able to do that.
Yeah.
A lot of my questions are like show their work, Bill. So
Yeah.
like right now we take diagrams to show division. So I don't want to necessarily have the fraction answer, but I have to see the tape diagram. So I'm having a hard time being able to have them upload their work because they're all on different kinds of devices. And so I'm trying to figure, I thought a Google form would be good, but I don't know, maybe you can shed some light on that.
Yeah. So the form, you can use that upload as long as the students have accounts. I think I have a loose question around here somewhere. This one. So if I do this, I'm just going to hit this upload. So this is one way they could put a picture up into your form. They'd probably have to work out the answer on paper and maybe take a picture of their paper and attach it and send it to you. So there's a couple of different things you can do. If you want to stick with just forms, because do you have Google Classroom or no?
Yes, I have Google Classroom.
So that might be the easier option to go with because they can, you can kind of give them the quiz. It can even be a PDF type document. They can kind of look at it on the screen and maybe answer on paper with a pencil or something. And they can attach the answer and send it up to you. I have a short video on that too, and we could look at it in a few minutes too. But if you don't mind, I'll ask you to hold off on that because then I have to disconnect my other screen and like connect another device to the computer to actually demo that. But either way, let's just, because there might be someone else in the room that has the same question you do and wants to do it with a form. If you want to, I'm going to click this file upload. I'm going to make this a question, and it kind of gives me some information when I chose make a file upload. So it says files will be uploaded from the owner's Google Drive. So that kind of means they have to be signed in with some kind of Google account. It can be a personal Google account, or it could be their school account. And it actually even says it in the next sentence. So they'll need to require to sign into Google whenever you put an upload to your form. But let's hit continue. We'll assume that's okay. And the question will be take a photo of your work and upload it. And again, or if you're using Classroom, like I said, there's a way to attach your work in Classroom at Classroom Question 2, and we can look at that also. And it kind of, we didn't talk about the file upload, but since this came up the last time I did forms too, I figured it's other people. How many files? Well, if they need to take more pictures, if they have more sheets, you can certainly let them do that. Maximum file size is fine if it's a picture. Sometimes people ask them to submit a video. You might bump that up to 100. I mean, if you're using your school account, you don't, we have unlimited space anyway, so there's no need to cause people problems with file sizes. So if I did do this, when they get to this question, they would hit the upload button, and they can either take a picture live with their phone, because you can actually answer this you can answer this form on your phone or your iPad or some device that has a camera on it, because even most computers have a camera on it these days. You could kind of hold up your piece of paper or take a picture of it, hit the upload button, and you will get an image of whatever they drew or worked out on their piece of paper. If you're doing it in Classroom, I'm in Classroom over here, so I'm just going to look at Classroom for a second too. So if I hit plus, and I'll come back to Classroom too, because some people might ask about this one, but I'll just do a regular assignment. I can just tell them, take a photo of your work. And when they see it, they'll have the ability on the student end to add their own attachment or their own upload. When they do that, they have the option of taking a picture right away if they're using an iPad or any kind of tablet or any kind of phone. So that might be a good way around that. So did I answer your question there? And if anyone wants to do that, we can look at it.
Yeah, I'm gonna try it. I do know some of them have just limited abilities on different devices. That seems to be one of the bigger challenges, is the varying devices they're all using at home and troubleshooting.
Right.
But one of my students who's definitely a higher level student, her actual computer doesn't have a camera. So if she's doing her homework on her home computer, and then she comes to that question, she'd have to switch to a different device to answer it, right?
No, not necessarily, because what I would do then in that case is, so she's on her computer, she has her Google account, Google Drive. Maybe she could, either borrow a phone or borrow some device that has a camera on it. On that device, put the free Google Drive app. She could sign into her Google Drive account from the phone. So you can actually take the picture on the phone or iPad, upload it into Google Drive. Now it's in Google Drive, so it's available everywhere. So she comes back over to the computer when she sits down, and does the file upload or maybe the attachment. You can say, hey, grab it from Google Drive, and just have to remember, where you put that picture.
Okay, that works.
It is a couple
Bill,
extra steps, but it certainly can do it.
Okay. Thanks.
Something else that a few people had asked, as far as taking this form now and making it an assignment in Google Classroom, could you just go over what it would look like when you're looking to add it as a Google Classroom assignment?
Yes, and I accidentally closed out of my Classroom. So I'm just going to a new tab, and I'm launching Classroom again. So I'm in Classroom, and I did want to mention that too, because a lot of people use Classroom. So I'm just going to go into, I'll go to this demo class. And when I want to make assignments, I go to Classwork tab. And I hit this plus create button. And some people might have already noticed this quiz assignment. If you are using Classroom, you use quiz assignment. What this does for you, I'll just hit that really quick, is it kind of starts you out with the Google form already. Like we started from forms, this kind of makes one for you, and it already throws that switch for you for making it a quiz. So if you do it from Classroom and you make it this, you don't have to worry about going to that settings gear we did in the upper right corner and making a quiz. But let's just assume you did not do that. So I'm going to close out of this. And I'm sorry, the question was, how do we add this quiz that we just made into our assignments?
Yep.
Okay, so let's assume we had done what we just did. You followed along and you started making your own quiz. I can still do the plus create button. I'll make it an assignment. And I could say, try these practice problems or something, to see how you do, or whatever I like. I can give any additional instructions if I want. I can click this plus this add button here. And I'm going to grab that form from my Google Drive because we were just working on it. And I think I was calling mine demo 49, but if not, you can just look around my drive and find where your quiz is. So I'm just going to grab that. I'll add it. And you might notice, since this is a quiz and I'm using Google Classroom, it has this switch where it says grade importing. It'll actually automatically take their score and put it in your grade book for you. That switch goes away if you add extra things here. Like if you have maybe say, do this quiz and, write an essay on a separate piece of paper or an extra Google Doc. If you do anything with extra, this switch goes away, but it will just import your grade as it was. And remember when we were doing this, we talked about making each question certain amounts of points. However many points your form is what's going to come in on your grade importing. But let's put it in this class. Let's just finish it out. I do like to put due dates for things because then it shows up more easily for students. So I'm just going to click this next one because if it's something without a due date, sometimes they don't see it. It doesn't show up in their upcoming work. So I do like to do that. And maybe I'll put it in a topic or, I'll just put it in this ratios topic. I can either hit assign or, schedule it just like I can with my normal classroom kind of options. And as soon as that's done, it should be all set and it's in as an assignment. If I click on my grades tab, I should see that assignment show up out of these two. Oh, it looks like it's making it out of 100, but just keep in mind if your points don't add up to 100, that might not work out for you. And I'll go back to this. Were there any other questions I might have missed or some things I honestly,
hold on, I'm going down the line here. Patricia, we're going to come back to your question just because it's a little bit more
No, that's
specific.
fine. I understand.
Yeah, Bill can help me kind of sort through that. I'm trying to see. Lenore had asked a question about if you allow students to go back and edit an answer. Well, as far as like how are they able to get back? I don't know, Lenore, what was the specific question? Because now I can't find your question in the chat here. I believe it had to do with if a student submits an answer, right? And
Yes,
then they
if
go
the student submits the answer and it's wrong, they've been asking me, oh, I want to go back and change it. How do I go back and change it?
Yeah, so I think once you submit a form, unless you still have that form open and you have that button to edit responses, I'm not sure they're able to get back to that. Am I right on that, Bill?
Yes, I mean, they have a little bit easier time when it's, I think, in Classroom. Let's look at our settings for a second, though. So I think this is the one I was working on. So if I go into these settings, so I'm back in Forms. I'm going to this gear up here by the Send button. And there was something in here. Respondents can edit after submit. If I turn that on,
Okay.
they might be able to go back and change their answers. But if I'm giving them the correct answers after each one, it's pretty easy just to pick what the right one is.
But I also think if it's set to limit to one response, if they go to click on the link that's sitting in Google Classroom, it may not allow them to go back to it. These are some of those things that like we don't really quite figure out 100% until you start trying it with the students and see what setting is best for your situation and what you're trying to do with the students.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see, attaching in Google Classroom, we showed. Another person had asked if you use the grading tool, but somebody had already submitted the form. Let's say you added the grading feature on afterward. It's not going to go back and add in grades for submissions that have already been submitted. So anything that comes in after the fact will be graded, but if a student submitted answers and you had not turned on the grading feature, it's not going to go back and add an answer key or whatever, grade the student's responses if it was submitted prior. And then I think there was a little bit of confusion about the students being able to see the answers. If you're sharing, if you're going to that send button and you're sharing out the link, that is only a link for viewing the form itself. It's not going to show anybody your answers. If you were, Bill, did you show as far as sending it out to share with a colleague? Because I know that was something that had come up.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I know I've seen it before where, let's say a bunch of science teachers all work on the same grade level and they're looking to share their forms. I highly recommend that you go and you make a copy of that Google form. Bill, can we show them that?
Yeah, let's do that.
So that you're sharing a copy of the form and not your original form. Because if you and another colleague are working off of the same form, your responses are going to get clumped together. So in that spreadsheet afterward or in the responses tab, you're going to end up seeing responses from your colleague's class as well as your own. So the 3 dots on the top right, there
Right.
is an option to make a copy. And then you can then send that copy or, rename it, call it whatever. If I'm going to share it with Mrs. Smith, I'm going to say Smith's copy of, and I'm going to send it off to her. And that's going to be now her copy and I'm not going to worry about it. Or if somebody shares a form with you, maybe play it safe and say, make a copy just in case you don't want to end up, adding your students to their responses tab.
Right, right. And if you're working on it together and you want to kind of each collaborate, add questions, check each other questions, that's what the ed collaborators will do. You'll all work on the same one. But when it's done, make your own copy, have them make a copy. And that way you can kind of keep your students, if I'm on this one, I think, where it had names and period, you're going to have to try it. If everyone's using the same form, you'll have to try and, maybe you could add another button that says, who is your teacher? But that's the only way to kind of separate out your students from them if you're using that same form, like Carrie was saying.
Let's see. Can they reopen a form after submitting it? Yeah, so we kind of talked about that. I see John asked that question. Jillian, did I answer your question as far as students being able to go back and submitting a form? As long as you have that toggle checked off in the settings where it's only accepting one response, students should not be able to go back and send another response to you. So if they are setting it multiple times, then you may need to go back and just check your settings on your form. Let's see, what is the best way to translate a form to another language? I think you have to do it question by question. I had somebody asking me about that the other day. And I do believe you have to go in one question at a time to translate it.
Yeah, and someone was asking about the grades tab too. Where did I get that from? That should just come in Classroom. If you have used an older Classroom, maybe it might not have the grades tab, but as long as I'm in as teacher, I see the grades tab. The students do not see grades tab if we're in as a student view.
Oops.
So yeah, the grades tab seems to be coming up a couple times. I'm not sure if I 100% understand the question. Just how did I get this tab in Classroom in general or from the forum? I'm not sure. And if you want to unmute your mic and ask too, that's fine too.
Hi, Bill. I see the grades tab now. Just trying to understand, can we basically export that and use it in eSchool? How can we make best use of that?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the grades tab, it does integrate with some school management systems because we could be on with other people other than Sachem. I know you're from Sachem. It doesn't integrate with eSchool. So if your district uses eSchool, it doesn't export from grades to right into eSchool. You kind of have to copy them manually. But I believe there are a couple. I don't know what they are offhand, but you can actually take your grades from here, as I scored, or this is my demo class, so you can see some things are scored and not. But it would, in some cases, be able to, if it's integrated with your school management system, with your eSchool type or PowerSchool type thing, actually put them right in for you. Ours is just, Sachem is just not set up like that, and it doesn't work with eSchool anyway. So anyone who uses eSchool, it's not possible at this time.
Okay.
I do believe that there was one of the high school teachers had found a workaround where they were able to export the grades into like a CSV type file, but then there was something quirky about it, like there was a leading 0 on the students' usernames that he had to go in and remove, and then he was able to bring it into eSchool. I could go back, Jillian, if you want me to see exactly what it was that he did to make it work. I can't guarantee that it actually still does work, but
No, it's
I know
okay. I think I'm going to use my system is working for me.
Okay.
One quick thing, and I don't know if this is accurate or not. One thing that I've been doing is with my Google Forms, I've been going into each of my classes and reusing the post, let's say, for my 5 classes.
Mhm.
And, it creates a new form for them. And then when I open it, I make that response sheet like you taught me, Carrie,
Yeah.
and I just rename the response sheet. So it's basically the same form. And I don't know if I'm doing extra work with that or not. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm seeing Bill say if I just put a question on the form that says what period, it sounds like I'll get one Google form with everybody's work,
Yeah,
like
and
labeled
then
by period.
and actually, I think somebody else had asked that question. Bill, do you happen to have a spreadsheet that has
Yeah. So
something that could be sorted?
yeah, let's we'll look at it with only a few, but yeah. So let's just look at this one. So I had these. This has your name. I would definitely make period a drop down, like I said, so that or some kind of multiple choice because you don't want them typing things. That just gets all over the place. So if I look at these responses, this has more than one, and the easiest way to sort them after that is to go to the spreadsheet. So I don't know if I've already created a spreadsheet, but I will make one now. And now I'll kind of see at a glance, here's my students, here's which period it is. So even if I'm using one form for all my students, I could kind of hit the drop down and sort these maybe A to Z or whatever. And, now they're kind of in order. So I have them by period. I could actually even sort by 2 columns. I could sort by period and then by, if I had entered last name by last name, if you wanted to do that as well. In this form, I didn't ask for first and last name, so I just get what I got. Did I go through that too fast? Sometimes I talk too fast.
I think we're okay. I don't think anybody
Yeah,
else.
and kind of I can see all my answers at a glance here if I'd like. I can see what the student's score was on this one. This one I only had, I made each question 5 points, and I guess I had, I don't know, however makes up to 75.
So another question. So Britt, you're saying you don't have a grades tab on your Google Classroom. How do I get it there? If you had an older Google Classroom that you reused, it's possible the grades tab is not there. Any newer Google Classroom you create should have that grades tab. So
Yeah.
if you're not seeing it,
Yeah, and
it's an older version maybe.
something that's worth a try then is maybe go to your classes in Classroom. And you see the 3 dots next to the classroom that doesn't have it. See what happens if you click on it and you make a copy of it. I don't think it'll include all your students. You'll probably have to re-invite them, but you could certainly reuse your posts from the other classroom. And I honestly don't remember if it keeps my posts and material. It might just. I think it might. It's worth a try. Hit those 3 dots, hit the copy, see if you get the grade tab, and see if it keeps everything. Like I said, you might have to. Yeah, you know what? I'll just try it. Here, I'll hit copy. Copy class. I'll make this a copy. Create a new class with copied topics and classwork items. Rosters and announcements won't be copied. So anything I put in the announcement section won't work, and I'll have to ask the students to join this new class. But at least all the assignments will be there, and I think you'll have the grade tab. So yeah, I say give it a try. At worst, if you don't like it, you can always delete the copy.
Bill, can you go back to your the responses tab? So there's a question about how can I view my students' submitted form individually? So in the Google form itself,
Okay, yeah.
the responses.
Let's use this one because this
So,
one
like,
has more responses. So here I have 3. So I'm in the form. I picked I opened up my form from Drive. I came to it. Maybe by default you're on questions. You hit the responses tab, and now you can see the summary. So I can see how the class kind of did, or everyone who answered did as a whole, and the like. So depending on the type of question, it gives you different data to look at. So you can see if there's anything you need to look at. If you wanted, though, you were asking about individual. So if I click the far tab, I hit individual. And right now I'm on person 1, and I can see how this person did. And I can kind of look at their individual answers, at a glance. I can kind of see that they missed this question, did get those and did these. And when I'm ready to look at the next person, there's arrows at the top. I could just arrow to the next person. So here's person 2 in the forms, and I could see what their score, how they did.
And Lenore, I'm not sure that you could actually comment on their responses. I think that would be more like when you're creating the form, if you want to have like an automatic response if they get it wrong or get it right. That's the only way that they're going to get any kind of feedback. I don't believe that you can actually send individual students a comment based on their form's response.
Yeah, I don't think I can do it just strictly in forms. If you're using Classroom, though, you could do it through Classroom. Like if this form was part of a Classroom assignment, you could definitely put it in that grading tool inside of Classroom when you give feedback.
Yeah, the feedback is just kind of like, if I choose the wrong answer, it's going to pop up and say, this is why you chose the wrong answer. If I chose the correct answer, then maybe it's going to say, great job, you chose the right answer. That's all really that the feedback does. Maybe you would give them a suggestion to refer back to, a reading passage or a chapter or an article or whatever in the feedback. But yeah, as far as giving students individual comments, what Bill is saying is you do it in Classroom itself.
Right.
One question that Patricia had, she is teaching a lot of art students, like 600 some odd students, and she's pulling work from their, like that they're submitting, I guess, the artwork. Patricia, you want to chime in? And
Yeah,
because I don't know.
thank you.
Go ahead.
I have a form to collect their weekly art assignments, and they're uploading them and they're going to a folder that I have. So what I'm doing is on my website, I'm posting them. So when I have the page up and I go to insert and I go to drive, I select the pictures. But as I'm doing that, more students are submitting and they're dropping in between ones I've already put in. Is there any way I can indicate? Because when I get 75 ladybugs from kindergartners, they all look the same. So I can't even just look at it and be like, oh, wait, I already have that one.
So when you're seeing this, though, where are you seeing it? In your Google Drive or in your forms responses?
I see it in both. I have to click on it individually in the form and I see the image, but I can't take the image from there. I have to go through insert and from the folder through my drive that way.
Yeah,
So I mean, I deleted a couple of them, but I don't like the idea of removing them completely.
Right. So what happens with that, just, for other people who might not have used the upload tool, I know what you're talking about there. So when I had an upload question, and they upload things to me, I'm going to go to my drive, and depending on where I have that quiz, it makes a folder for me. So here's where file responses are. Because my quiz is in this folder, it automatically, and I had an upload question, it automatically makes this folder, Google makes the folder for me, and this is where the student submissions go. They go into my drive when they submit them to me. Let me just see if I have anything in one of these. I might have something in here. So I do have, so this is an image, and then I have a video in this one too. Like you said, anytime someone hits that upload button, and then after they finish uploading, they hit the submit button, it automatically appears in here as they do it.
Right.
What you can do is maybe make either a subfolder or maybe move some of those to another folder, because we don't have any way of preventing that from happening. So unless you want to make, put all of them up, I mean, if you're going to do that too, then maybe I would consider, maybe making, let me go up one folder or so. Maybe I would consider making this folder, because you have to make those things public to show up on your website, right? You right click on it, you do the share stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if that's what you're doing, you have to probably have it advanced. You have to change so it's not only I can access. Maybe you change it so that anyone at Sachem can see, or you just make it anyone with link can see. If you do that, then automatically your files are going to be accessible on the web. But I don't know what you're saying. So you're saying you grab them. I would think of moving
Individually,
them.
just because
Yeah, maybe make
sometimes
a
they send
subfolder.
4 pictures. I just
Yeah.
take one.
Yeah, I think I might just make a folder of 4 website pictures and just move them out of there, because once they're submitted in here, I'm sure they still have a copy at home, because they have the actual drawing that they did, and they probably take their own picture. So I wouldn't mind moving them out of the folder and say, hey, these are the ones I'm going to put up on the web, and that way it doesn't keep changing on you as you're building the website.
Yeah, it's crazy because I will literally take a few minutes to respond to them via email, and when I come back, I'll have like 10 more, and they're all scattered in between the ones I already posted, so I have to find them.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So yeah, no, I think when you find a good one, just either move it into a subfolder, move it into like a, you know, a for website folder, or, you know, something like that. And I think it'll just make things easier for you. So then when you go over to the website tool, you know, if you go to Google Sites or whatever tool you might be using, you can go ahead and add that in.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, sure thing.
I think we hit all of the questions. Anybody else have any questions before we say goodbye to everyone? I think I got everybody in the chat. I hope I did. All right. I think we're good, Bill.
All right, yeah, well, thanks everyone for joining us this morning. Hopefully you found it helpful. We had our contact information up, but you can always feel free to send us an email or something if you have trouble, and we'll probably do a question and answer session next week, you know, just questions and answers. So if anyone has something that comes up between now and then, you know, hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions. But thanks again for joining us. Hopefully everyone you know, has a good rest of the day and stays healthy, and you know, maybe we'll see you at the next one.
All right. Take care. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thanks, Carrie.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll talk to you
See
soon.
you later.